One. Welcome everyone to today's podcast. My name is Paul. I'm a very happy member of Cocaine Anonymous. I'm really pleased to have been joined today by Jennifer R. from Costa Rica and New York.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So welcome everyone to the channel. Really pleased to be back with you all today, family. Please feel free to check out the other recordings. We've got recordings on each of the 12 steps. We've actually got two recordings on step 1 and 2 on step 2 as of yesterday. We've got a whole raft of personal stories, including 2 personal stories from Jennifer R., who you're about to hear. There is one on the spiritual malady, an entire psychic change, and the ABCs of recovery. So please feel free to check those out. So Jennifer's come along today to share with us the history and growth of Cocaine Anonymous. So I'm really pleased, and without further ado, it is over to you.
Hi, my name's Jennifer, and I'm a very grateful recovering cocaine addict. And the reason I say that is that it makes me feel better. It's not like I really believe the whole thing, but I do know that every day that I say it, I have a better day. So it's like a positive affirmation of why I say I'm a very grateful recovering cocaine addict. That's been helping me. Okay, so as you know, from my story, I got sober and there was no Cocaine Anonymous. And, I went to AA and, I had to lie in AA because at the time I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I later learned it's all the same thing. And yes, I am an alcoholic, but I felt like a liar. I didn't believe that I belonged in NA because in NA, I hope that's okay to say it, but in NA in New York City, they were shooting up under their tongues and their toes. And, I wasn't like that. So it was hard for me in the beginning. So what happened was my best using friend, Amy, she was in Bellevue Hospital in New York, and she had been paralyzed, and she had 2 diseases that could probably kill her. And someone told me she was there under assumed name. And I went there, and I had 3 years of sobriety. And I walked through the door in the hospital, and she said, "How the hell did you find me?" And, she just told me recently, I thought she was mad I found her. And she was embarrassed that she was in that shape and I was sober. So that was good to know that she didn't hate me because I was sober. She was just embarrassed. So for 3 months, 90 days, she was in the hospital. And I visited her every day. And I was subtly 12-stepping her. But I knew I had a lot of time. And she couldn't walk because she was paralyzed. But we had a lot of fun in the hospital. And towards the end, I remember wheeling her around. And I said, "You know what, Amy? You should try coming to a meeting with me. The guys are really cute." And that convinced her. So when she got out of Bellevue Hospital, we walked upstairs to the 79th Street workshop. We went in, sat in the front row, and she looked around the room and she said, "You lied. This is not the kind of guy we got high with. They are not all good-looking guys." So I wanted to help her stay sober. So we came up with a plan. I was in school to become a cocaine counselor. It was a new thing. And I was doing my thesis on to helping a cocaine addict recover. So we're in this meeting, and what we did was we decided that we were going to start Cocaine Anonymous, not knowing it existed in California. Somehow I found out, and I contacted Ray, and Ray was the co-founder with Johnny. And Ray was the person that answered the phones, and he talked for an hour and 10 minutes. And it was wonderful learning that there was a fellowship, that I felt at home with. I immediately felt at home. And he taught us how to start a meeting and everything. And I was blown away. But I found out recently, the reason he talked for an hour and 10 minutes was he was still high. He did cocaine for the first year, I think it was. I don't have the dates exactly. And I contacted him in October, I believe, of 83, and they started in November of 82. Whatever. I might have contacted him in September, whatever. But anyhow, Cocaine Anonymous officially started when we got a meeting in a legal location. And that was Thanksgiving in the United States, November 23rd, 1983. And we had it in the guy's apartment because I wanted to see what was to try it. So we had this guy, there were 4 of us, and we held it in his apartment. And I had cookies from the best bakery in New York. And we bribed people to come. And he had no consciousness. This guy, Andy, that was in the beginning. It was Andy, Danielle, Amy, and me. And he didn't care. He went to AA and he announced a new Cocaine Anonymous meeting. He went to NA, announced it. He didn't care that he was breaking the traditions, and we got people. And I remember the first guy that came in, Frank, he's still sober now. The first guy that stayed, and he said, look, I've still got 2 ounces of cocaine. I don't know what to do with them. They're in my safe deposit box. Now, I had the most sobriety. So I told him, I raised my hand and I said, Frank, trust me, you can give them to me. But I wasn't going to stay sober if he gave me those 2 ounces, and I knew it. So thank God he just flushed them. But anyhow, waste. But anyhow, I'm glad he did that. Then people started getting high in the bathroom and selling cocaine in the bathroom. So at this guy's apartment. So we knew we had to move to a public place. So I was the one that went out and looked for a public place. And I was rejected by so many places, so many hospitals, so many churches that had other meetings. And finally, I went to one church on 73rd and Madison. And unbelievably, they said yes. So that was how we officially started. Before we got to that church meeting hall, we had named our Cocaine Anonymous meeting the Ultimate Rush. And at our first business meeting, they changed it. And it's called Miracles on Madison, and it's still going on now. And, it was so funny that they call it, I thought Ultimate Rush was a good name. But anyhow, what I found out later was that 2 of the members, when we were still in Andy's apartment, would go out and have drinks after the meeting to discuss it, and so things got a lot better and more organized when we were in an official location that we could list and we could keep going. So what we did was starting that meeting there. And I remember the second business meeting, someone that's still sober said, I think we should do this, this, and this. And I was like, oh my God, because I was the one doing most everything, like Paul does. I was doing all the service work, and I'm still sober. And I say that service keeps you sober. And I still believe that. So anyhow, I was doing everything. And she said, we need to do this, this, and this. And I just thought, there's no way I could do that, because I was already starting a second meeting where I worked as a counselor, and I was thinking, I can't do all that. And it just got a voice in my head that said, okay, you came up with those ideas. We'd love to have them. Please follow through. And I still do that today. When there's an idea that comes up, is I have to flip it back to them, or I'd be going crazy. And so I'm very grateful that God gave me a little message to keep going. Okay, so I went out, once it was started, I went out to the first Cocaine Anonymous convention, and it was in Santa Barbara, California. And I can't remember, I think it was 1984, but I'm not positive. But anyhow, so I go out there, and Johnny and his then wife, Janine, Johnny, the co-founder, Janine, were speaking Friday night. She was Coanon and he was Cocaine Anonymous. And they were wonderful. And Janine and I became fast friends. And I ended up naming my daughter after her. And she moved to New York, and where I was living, and started Koanon meetings there. So I helped her get those started in the same church where we had our meetings at the same time, so that the Koanon, it was Koanon at first, but Koanon could meet at the same time as Cocaine Anonymous, so that spouses could come, or whatever they were, lovers, whatever. So anyhow, that was really cool. And I'm still dear friends with her. My daughter's 32. And, when we go to New York, we meet up with Janine. And, it's really cool. And we're going to New York in a couple of weeks. We do that every year, my daughter and I, except for COVID. We go to New York and stay at the hotel that we stayed at as Cocaine Anonymous, that I'll get to. And well, I'll tell you now, because, now I better start with getting on the first board of trustees. So I'm out at this convention in Santa Barbara. And at the end of the convention, we had a business meeting. And then at the next one, Johnny and Ray needed a board of trustees. And I think I listened to Ray the other day, and it was 17 months after Cocaine Anonymous was founded in LA. So at this convention I went to, it was I can't remember, somewhere in California. There's a woman that's still sober that reminds me every year where it was. I can't remember, but it was in Southern California. And I was interviewed by Johnny and Ray, and I go into the interview, and amazingly, they ask, do you know your traditions? I said, yeah, which one do you want to know? Because I had gone to school, and they taught us everything about the traditions and the concepts of the 12-step programs that was started by AA. And I said, which tradition do you want to know? And then they said, do you know the concepts? I said, yeah, which concept do you want to know? And, I thought I did pretty well. And then it's like, we go to the end where they announce which 6 people are going to be are going to be on the first board of trustees with Johnny and Ray. And they named 5 guys: H. Lee, Bob, Greg, Finn, and why am I forgetting one more? But anyhow, there was one more. Anyhow, and Reggie. And Reggie. And I was devastated. I almost started crying. I was like, I didn't make it. I couldn't believe it. And then they called out one last name, and it was my name. And, I got to go up to the front, and I really felt, if anybody's ever seen a beauty contest, I really felt like I'd won the beauty contest. I was hysterically crying. And, I was just so grateful to be on the first board. Back then, CA had 0 money. And for the whole time I was on the board, I stayed on for 4 years. They asked me to stay on longer, but I now had a child and everything. And my life was so full, I didn't think I could do another year. So after the original 4 years, I didn't stay on longer, because they were trying to rotate the first board off at different times so that it wouldn't be all new board members. But anyhow, it worked out okay. And so I was on this board, and I loved it. It was so amazing. We went out to California 4 times a year. I still have 2 pictures that I will send to Paul, if you remind me, Paul, that I can send you of the first board. And it was very exciting 4 years. Well, I think it was 2.5 years in, I got married to the guy that I met at the first Cocaine Anonymous meeting. He was the chairperson in Connecticut. And, I was talking to my friend Amy yesterday, talking about that first meeting when we went. We went with a guy that owned a shoe company, a large one, in his limo. And it was 3 of the co-founders and this guy. And it was just so much fun going to that meeting. And we ended up getting married in the South Pacific on Valentine's Day. And that was wonderful. But on the way to getting married in the South Pacific, I came to the CA Board of Trustees meeting. And then we stayed overseas for a long time, going to Australia and everything, and New Zealand, and Bali, and what was the other one? It doesn't matter. Sorry, I got lost in that thought. I know where it is. Tahiti. That's where I wanted to get married, but you have to live there 3 months before you can get married. So we went to all these places, and by the time we got back, it was another board of trustees meeting, and I tied that in, and then I had a baby. And when I had the baby, I had to bring her to the board of trustees meetings. Okay. And I would bring her to those meetings, and my husband would bring her down when it was time for me to feed her. So I nursed in those meetings. The unfortunate part was California was 3 hours behind us. And she woke up at 3 o'clock every morning, and it was just exhausting. But I did it. But that was why I chose not to take an extra year, you know. And I remember coming into the board meeting once with a local issue that didn't belong in the board meeting. And I was told that while I was there, that the convention that I had started, that was a cocaine convention that met every year, that I had found the location and everything else, that they had voted that children couldn't be a part of the convention. And my daughter was like 12 months old or less. I don't remember. But anyhow, I was like, I can't leave my baby at home. And I said to the board, Cocaine Anonymous is a bridge back to life. When we get our lives back, sometimes we get married, sometimes we have children, but that's because of the bridge of staying sober. And, you know, I felt like I was excluded. And what I had to realize was when I went to my first CA event that was big, and I was living in Costa Rica, you know, and when they did the sobriety countdown, I wasn't included because they started the countdown of the day that Cocaine Anonymous in New York started. And I had to realize, I mean, I confronted the guy maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I said, you know, I was really hurt that you left me out. He said, I had no idea. And all those years I carried a resentment towards him, and he's still sober, of course, and so am I. But anyhow, that it's a bridge back to life, and that, you know, being a pioneer is okay. But I have to realize that because I got sober before Cocaine Anonymous started, you know, that sometimes I don't get to shout out how long I'm sober. So that's okay. Oh, and I wanted to show Paul I have a 40-year coin that I was given by Frank, who was an archivist and on a board of trustees. And it was so great to get a specially made 40-year pink coin made out of brass, I think, but the front's pink enamel. So anyhow, back to this. So I had to realize that being a pioneer is not the best thing, but I didn't start Cocaine Anonymous. Oh, I started Cocaine Anonymous. There's no ego in that. I mean, in New York, I meant that. Sorry. I started Cocaine Anonymous in New York. And there's no ego. This happened God's will. And I just stepped up to the plate. You know, it could have been any one of us, like we know in all parts of the world. Any one of us could have started it. But the ones that started it were the ones that were called and stepped up to the plate or heard the message, you know. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. It's so beautiful listening to you. Just wanted to very briefly say that on the screen, there you are in the Museum of CA. If you look on the screen.
Oh, thank you.
June 27th, 1985, the official Cocaine Anonymous World Services Board of Directors meeting, June 27, 85, was called to order by Willie O. At 8:12, board members in attendance were Willie, Ray, Lawrence, Neil, Robert, Richard, Jennifer, and Michael. And there you are, and you're mentioned elsewhere as well. You're mentioned there further up as well. So I just thought I would point that out. And by all means, you can come on the camera later and show us the coin later if you'd like. But that's enough out of me. Wonderful. Do carry on.
Thank you so much. I thought I'd done something wrong, so I'm so grateful I hadn't. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to show you the coin now. And you don't, nobody can see this, I don't think. So I'm just going to, try to do this. Oh, there we are. That was so sweet. Thank you. I don't know. Oh, wait, the camera's up here. It says 40 there. And then, I will send this to you so you can get a better picture.
Hold it still. Hold it still.
I'm getting old to be still.
I know. That's amazing.
Okay. And on the back.
Could you turn? Yes. What's on the back? 40 years.
Yeah. And there was a long debate. I got to turn off my video.
I'm going to mute and hand it back to you. That's beautiful.
Okay. Thank you for letting me do that. And I thought I was stopping the video. Thank you for letting me show you my coin, because what I want to get to is, can you believe, you guys, that after all this time, I still thought, oh gosh, she's calling me out because I did something wrong. So, here we go. Okay. So, I just wanted to, I'm going to get into Ray and Johnny, because I am very grateful for both of them in my life. And Johnny told a story before I even thought of going to Costa Rica, before I even knew about Costa Rica. Johnny told a story about being in Central America. Well, he said Costa Rica. He said Costa Rica, but it didn't ring a bell to me. And he was watching the ocean, okay? And he could see that there was white going out. And he said to his friend that lived there, he said, "What's that?" And his friend said, "Oh, that's a riptide. You could get caught up in one. And if you fight it, you will be swept out of sea. If you surrender, it'll move you out of the riptide." And Johnny used that a lot to tell people about surrendering in Cocaine Anonymous. When you fight, you're going to lose. When you surrender, you win. And you've got to surrender to win. And that was a great story. If anybody listens to Johnny's stories, you'll hear it. So when Johnny died, Ray contacted me in Costa Rica and said, "You've got to come to the funeral." And I couldn't. And I really wanted to go, but I showed my best friend Johnny's picture, and Johnny had these great pictures of him, when he was an actor, their headshots. And I showed her that picture and she said, "Oh my God, he and his wife, Janine, stayed with us at our house many years ago." And I said, "No, you can't be serious. Was it Donald that told him about the riptides, that you have to surrender to survive?" And she said, "Yes." And I thought, wow, how amazing is that? And then, I asked Janine, Janine DP is her name. I said, "Did you know you stayed at my best friend's house, my best friend in Costa Rica's house?" And she said, "Oh, I hated it. There were so many bugs and snakes." And she was absolutely right. And I can't remember, geckos and lizards and everything. So it was very cool to see, I have a sponsee that said, "Is it odd or is it God?" And, I really believe that some things happen and go in a circle. And, I'm so grateful that I had Johnny and Ray in my life. And Johnny died many, many years ago, as you know. But Ray lived until, well, last time I talked to him was July 16th. And we were great friends in the States because we could talk all the time. In Costa Rica, I was off the grid and it was really hard to communicate with people. So Ray and I talked all the time. And on July 16th, I was honoring the death of my best friend 30 years ago. She killed herself in sobriety. And I was speaking at a CA meeting. And on the way to the CA meeting, I was talking to Ray. And I had fallen and was in the hospital the day before. And talking to Ray, he fell while I was talking to him. And we both had the exact same symptoms. We both got wobbly, and then we fell for no reason. And I said, oh my God, Ray, we're tracking. This is exactly what happened to me yesterday. And he said, I like tracking with you. We used to have a really fun relationship. And, it was just amazing. And, after I talked to him, I called him after the meeting and he didn't answer. And the next day he didn't answer. So I called Frank and I said, Frank, he fell. And I'm worried. And he called the family. But this had happened a lot, that Ray was out of communication. And they didn't find his body until Thursday. Now, we don't know. He died after I talked to him, but his son told me I was the last phone call he was ever on. And I honor him and I love him. And he's one of the most special people. And he used to say all the time to me, I'm going to make you famous, kid. CA's around the world now, and it's like so funny to be famous in an anonymous program. None of you, you don't know my details, and so it's just so funny that that's what, he said. And I remember now the story that I was about to tell at the CA convention, when the CA conventions went on and they finally voted that kids could come, and my daughter and her best friends could come because they were my sponsor's daughter, still are. That's who I'm going to visit in New York in a couple of weeks. And, she's got 41 years. She celebrates on the 22nd of November. She'll have 42 years. And I heard my daughters saying to all the other kids that were there at this Cocaine Anonymous convention, my mom invented this. And I started laughing, because that's a kid's way of thinking what's going on. But, we are anonymous. And if my ego ever gets in, I have to be very careful to keep it out, because that's not what this is about. Ego is easing God out. And I want to carry the message of the program, not my personal. Anyhow, I think you guys know what I mean. But anyhow, I have to keep my ego out. And Paul and I said a prayer before we started, and it's the we version of the Serenity prayer. And I love the we version because it's putting God in charge and keeping us out and egos out. And every business meeting I'm in, I do the same thing, before the business meeting starts. Well, back when I had to chair them all the time and everything, I no longer chair. But it would be at the business meeting, the we version of the Serenity prayer. Anyhow, and now just recently, I've talked about having to come to California. And, there's lots more meetings now that I'm in California, but I'm still not going to live meetings, and there's still CA meetings online so that I can get to. And I'm very excited about being able to get to those now. And I learn about more and more. So I'm back involved, because if you heard me speak the other day, I started a CA meeting in Costa Rica, but nobody came because it's an expat society. And, I had the sign of CA and all the stuff, and nobody came. And I realized later, and they told me later, that they couldn't come because if the law enforcement found out, they might try to arrest us. And to us, it wasn't worth going to jail in a third world country. It was so much better to not be a part of that. So I started an open AA meeting, and, cocaine addicts come a lot. And, all the isms come, or addictions, that's it. All the addictions come. And it's wonderful because we're open, because guess what? Our meetings couldn't be closed, or people down there. It was a very hedonistic society when I went down there. It was the end of the road. It was like all North Americans and anybody that came from anywhere. It was the end of the road. and they could drink and drug as much as they wanted. And nobody would know, nobody would care. And that was hard for me too, because, I was speaking at a Cocaine Anonymous convention, the international in New York one year. And, my sponsee, who's still my sponsee, was in that meeting along with my mother. And because my mother was 37 years sober when she died. And I said to them, it's really hard in Costa Rica because cocaine's only $8 a gram. And my sponsee raises her hand and says, because she lives in Costa Rica, about 6 hours from me, she says, oh, where I live, it's only $6 a gram. And it was like, that's scary. And so I had to realize that, I was living in a society that was very hedonistic, and I had to be very careful, and I would get my euphoric by listening to some of the people that would share about their cocaine use in Cocaine Anonymous. And so it was very exciting, but it was also euphoric recall, and I had to stop that. So anyhow, I had to stop all that. And I just thought I got pinged out. So I was getting like, oh no, again. So I want to say that on my 10th anniversary of being sober,
Jennifer,
yes.
I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, but it appears that you may be moving something near the microphone. There's terrible interference whenever are you moving anything? Perhaps?
And I apologize for that.
No, it's all right. I'm just letting you know going forwards. That's all.
Yes. And I had to do it because my cord had fallen out of my computer and it would go dead. So I was like, oh, I hope, and I didn't make it silent. Sorry, everybody. My bad. I really hoped I could do that silently, but I was so afraid. So anyhow, we started with a book. When I was on the board of trustees, my favorite was public information, and the anonymity tradition. And I knew, and they've just added, oh no, they haven't added. They've added to the preamble in AA, not men and women. The preamble just changed people or something, it says. So anyhow, I thought we were going to add social media to the 11th tradition, but we haven't, because at the level of press, radio, and film does not include social media. Okay, so that's one thing. Is it's also because we're at the level of the public, so I don't ever do anything, and I code it. Like I put up a coin and say, thank you, everybody, for helping me get this far, but I don't say what it's about or what the coin's about. It'll just say 40, but it doesn't say CA. I've forgotten how we made those coins, but one word didn't fit in, so we had to change it. Oh, I think hope, faith, and courage. I've forgotten the word that didn't fit in, but anyhow, it doesn't matter. So we had to change that for what we were going to make the coins with what it said. So anyhow, so I loved, being anonymous, etc. I was involved with the book, the first book, Hope, Faith, and Courage. I wasn't on that committee, and I was no longer a trustee, but they asked me to tell my story. So I did on the 10th anniversary of my sobriety, and I can't remember it. Shoot, I can't remember the name. I also wrote in the Cocaine Connection newsletter, and that was Addicted to Excitement. So I was in that one many, many years ago. And of course, I've turned all my archives over to the different places, like New York. I did something in New York that you're not supposed to do, but I typed up every CA meeting in the beginning for my thesis without mentioning names. So I guess you can do it as long as it's at the level, where I didn't mention names. And it was so funny when I got asked to speak in New York with the history of CA. I brought all my archives. And when I handed it to them, they said to everybody, look at this. This is typed. It was before computers, that it was on a, you have to type everything. So anyhow, that was funny. But so I had all the exact records of how many people were there, what we discussed, and everything else, but it was anonymous. So anyhow, I don't have those archives. I don't have any of the other archives at all. And because what's it called? Costa Rica is very humid. Where I lived was like the ninth most humid place in the world, and everything got ruined. You couldn't keep anything down there. So I gave all the archives away, so I don't have anything. But so my story, I was so embarrassed. I guess the first Hope, Faith, and Courage came out twice. So the first one was on page 69. And I was mortified. I was grateful that I was in Hope, Faith, and Courage, but I couldn't believe it was on page 69. And a while back, a guy from New Jersey wanted me to tell my story at his anniversary, like 35 or something. I don't remember, but because I was so instrumental in his sobriety. And I said, yeah. He said, we're going to read your story. I said, oh no, you're going to read my story and then I'm going to share? And he said, yes. And I said, is it really on page 69? He said, no, it's on page 64. And then I found out there were two editions. So the second edition, I'm on page 64, but now they have the second book. So anyhow, so that was exciting being in the first book. And in San Francisco before COVID, when I was visiting, I went to a Cocaine Anonymous meeting, and they were sharing from the first book, my story. And I couldn't believe it. And I said, I don't have a copy of that. And so I bought it, or they gave it to me so I could give to my daughter. So she has a copy of it. So anyhow, I was, and now I'm going to tell her about this later on, that she can have a copy of this. And I'm just going to wrap it up. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more about Ray. And it's still so fresh and so difficult for me. But I want to say that he didn't die in vain. And, because I got, in the beginning, I didn't know why I fell. I didn't know why he fell. I'm still getting MRIs, and getting all this work done. Who cares? As we get old, we get these issues. So I'm sorry I'm bringing it up. So anyhow, but what I got was a thing I wear around my neck. We used to laugh at it when I was younger. Help, I've fallen and I can't get up, but this one has fall protection, it's more modern. So if I fall, they notify the ambulance and everything. Well, when I fell 6 weeks ago and went into, got what's it called? No, it was 4 weeks ago, knee fracture in 3 places. And I'm laying on the ground and I'm looking at this thing and it's not asking me anything. I couldn't reach them. So I called an ambulance. So anyhow, but anyhow, I do have fall protection, Ray, and God willing, it will save me. And, Ray and Janine, Johnny's wife, told me a lot of stories of Johnny at the end, because he would come visit her in New York. And Janine and I and my mother and my brother were at a different meeting that I was celebrating at. I was visiting New York, and Janine and I met, and we both said we felt Johnny with us. It just felt like it was there. He was there. And she said it would be just like Johnny to come on my wedding anniversary to my new husband. And we went to the meeting, and I'm sitting up front, and a guy named Johnny spoke, and the 12-step banner fell at the same time. And I looked at Janine in the audience, and she looked at me, and we both mouthed Johnny because he was there. And Johnny was a hoot. He was great. I remember being with, and I know I've got to end this. I'm sorry. I'm coming up with new stories all the time. Johnny, Ray, myself, and Johnny's second wife, Karen, were in a restaurant in California, and John in the bathroom. And I said, hey, Karen, let's get under the tablecloth. And when they come back, we will tickle their ankles. So they get back, and I tickle Ray's ankles, and she tickles Johnny's. And they both jump up and are screaming. And it was hysterical. That was a fun thing. Anyhow, so Ray and I were much closer because we had a lot more years together, but anyhow, I got to know the inside Johnny and, Johnny wrote a song. Oh, and I can't remember it, but it's so program. I just can't remember it, but it's like a saying in the program. So Belinda Carlisle sang it, and I think it's on his tombstone too. I believe in magic. I think that's what it is. Yes, and it's time, and I am done. So I just wanted to share that about Johnny, and let me see. That's it. I'm still sober, thank God, and thank you all for listening to me for so much. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And well, I said it to you before the meeting. Cocaine Anonymous royalty. How privileged we are on this channel to have you sharing with us, and I mean that. And for many of our newer members and newer listeners, they will be amazed, to see that you was right there in the early days of Cocaine Anonymous in New York, and all over the place. And I'd like to think that you'll come back on the channel when you get time in your schedule, and we can talk more about Cocaine Anonymous. Just before we get back into our discourse, I just want to let our members know that on screen just now, I've got a list of meetings that are on Zoom, and furthermore, there's 8 of these meetings that are on every single day. So if you look at the top left, you can see the Breakfast Club. That's on every morning at 7:30 in the morning UK time, which is 2:30 in New York. And then 9:30 every morning is Great Gratitude, which is 4:30 New York, getting a bit nearer the time they get up on the East Coast of America. Pop-up recoveries on every morning at 10:30. Wow. Weekend recoveries on every day at 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. That's UK time, so that's 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. in New York. And then at the top right, Daily Reprieve, that's Friends of Mine. That's another very good meeting. That's on every night at 9:30 UK time, 4:30 New York time. Reaching Out, another great meeting on every night at 11 p.m., 6 p.m. New York time. And Tazana, that's a very old meeting. That's a Displaced in America. That's on every night at midnight UK time, at 7 p.m. New York time. So, that is 8 meetings that are on every single day. So please come along to a meeting. Please reach out. If you listen to this podcast and you want to reach out in the conversation below the YouTube video, please do. They're monitored and we will get back to you. If you'd like to add anything, or indeed if you'd like to appear on one of these podcasts, reach out to us in the chat. Check out the other videos on this channel. Jennifer's got 2 of her personal stories as well on this channel. And, just to come back to the content of our conversation, I mean, what was it like in those early days? Many of our listeners, Jennifer, will be amazed. I mean, there must have been a time, for example, when you didn't have We Can Recover or Reaching Out or Who is a CA member. Those readings wouldn't have been there at the beginning. What did the meetings look like in those days?
Pretty crazy. And what was really cool was finally to find the people that we were with out there, but without cocaine. It was wonderful because I find in Cocaine Anonymous meetings, I get a natural high. I don't get it in other fellowships. I get it in our fellowship because I really feel I'm at home. And it's just incredible. And so the meetings back then were like they are now, but more, I guess, Wild West, I could say, working our way like pioneers to figure out what we were going to be. And that was exciting. Never in a million years did I think it would go this far. And so I'm very grateful about that. And also the word you put up here on the chat, the word that wouldn't fit was willingness. Thank you for reminding me. I just couldn't remember. So it's hope, faith, and courage. So, and the other thing that, what you just had up on the screen of the meetings, where can we see that it doesn't go away after the meeting?
So our listeners to this podcast right now will be able to press pause on their screen and check that out. So
Okay, good.
all they need to do is rewind on the YouTube video,
Got it.
and they'll be able to pause it and check that out.
Okay,
and it's
great.
the same with any of the readings. Back to you.
Great. And also, I saw at the top, it said CA Cocaine UK. I mean, Cocaine Anonymous UK or whatever it said. Will it be there as well?
Yeah, so I'll put it back up for you if you like. Just give me a moment.
No, I just wanted to make sure it would be there. I don't need to see it again. It's okay, unless you want other people to see it.
Not a problem. I've said it. Just give me a moment. I'll pop it back
Sure.
up for you. Yeah, so our listeners can rewind and pause this at any point.
Oh, good. We're getting a lesson.
Yeah. So at the beginning, then there must have been a lot of enthusiasm. A brand new fellowship had been created. Yes. Meetings were becoming established, and we went through the history, the chronology of the different areas being ratified. It must have been a very exciting time, a time of growth and development for the fellowship.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I totally forgot to bring this up, which is one of the things that everyone talks about now. And it blows me away because I thought it was no big deal. So I lived in New York, and I was very active with AA General Service Office. Okay. We have CA World Service Office, WSO instead of GSO, but they're the same. So they had a public meeting that no one knew about on Fridays at noon. And I would go there, and it was all the people that worked in the AA General Service Office, and that were sober. And it was so exciting. I went there every week, and I would see, my mother's sponsor worked there, and I would see, I've forgotten her name, but she was the secretary of CA. She wasn't, of AA, and she wasn't sober, but I saw her office and her typewriter. And it was just very cool going to GSO every week. And so when we were doing literature, I said, I don't know who said, I don't remember, but I ended up getting us invited to AA GSO Board of Trustees meeting, and no 12-step program had ever asked them to use their literature. And no 12-step program had ever gone to their weekend of the Board of Trustees. So it was great. It was Ray, me, and Greg. And we went, and we had a ball. And it was so much fun. And it was so unbelievable being like with the grandfather of the program. And, they taught us how to borrow or use their name. And I've forgotten how we put it now. But we say granted by permission of AA or GSO, something like that. But anyhow, that was nice. And there was a letter and everything. And it was really cool to be the only program, I was surprised, that had ever asked to do that, and to be honored to go to that, thing. And my daughter and I stayed in that hotel until last year when it closed due to COVID in New York. So now we have to stay at a different one. But I remember, I have to just finish this. I remember, and that just dropped my phone. I got too excited. I remember walking into this hotel that we had the first World Service Board of convention in New York there. It was the Grand Hyatt in Grand Central Station. And I said to Ray, you cover your hands before going in the door so you don't touch anyone's cooties. And he laughed about that. Anyhow, that's where my daughter and I are staying now that hotel's closed. We're staying at the Grand Hyatt at Grand Central Station. That was at Grand Central Station too. So anyhow, I'm sorry I went on so long, but I wanted to tell you. Thanks.
Beautiful. And, it must have been really exciting times to see the fellowship flourishing and growing. And I'm thinking of those first sort of 10, 15 years from the early to mid 80s through to the turn of the century. It must have just been a thrilling time to see all the new areas being ratified and new meetings springing up. And then the first edition of Hope, Faith and Courage, as you've indicated. And then you was part of seeing the 12 steps and the big book being allowed by AA or GSO to be used by CA
Mhm.
And then, of course, later you're actually, one of your story is in Hope, Faith and Courage.
Yes.
And as you said, on 2 different pages, because the 2 different editions, the 2 different publishing rounds. And then, of course, you would have been around later when the Quiet Peace was motioned and ratified and accepted and published and distributed. And then, of course, as I say, the 2nd edition of Hope, Faith and Courage. What's it been like, Jennifer, over that period of time, over 40 years
Yeah.
now? Well, 30 odd years of your experience of Cocaine Anonymous, nearly 40 years of seeing it flourish to the point where now there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of CA meetings on Zoom every week. So there'll be across the airwaves right now, people from all over the world are actually in Cocaine Anonymous meetings right now as we speak, over the airwaves, and record this podcast for our listeners. What's it been like to see it flourish and develop over that period of time?
It was magical. It was spiritual beyond belief. That God, if you don't mind me saying God was willing to help so many people get sober through this fellowship. I mean, when I started in New York, one hospital that had meetings said to me, "What, you going to start Vodkas Anonymous next? We don't need Cocaine Anonymous." And then I would talk to people in other in NA, sorry, the name we shouldn't say, and I'm sorry, I'm saying it. And they were like, "We don't need Cocaine Anonymous." And I said, "But cocaine is not a narcotic, And so there wasn't.
Whatever you're moving there sounds like a hurricane here.
So what am I moving?
Whatever you're moving, yeah.
I am
it's all right. No, carry on. It's quite all right. Carry on. It's a miracle.
Amazing.
What God has done is a miracle. Yeah.
I can't believe that I got that emotional, that I was moving my whole body and my knees up, and I was just like trying to express to you, with my body how amazing it was. So sorry I did that. Anyhow, it was a miracle. And you know what? It gets people off the elevator going down sooner, because if there wasn't CA, we would have to go lower till the other addictions brought us in.
Yeah.
And so it's truly a miracle. And if I have Johnny's song right, I believe in magic. That says it all.
So, I mean, it's totally fine. We could still hear what you were saying. So, it's very moving for me to hear you share about the history and growth of Cocaine Anonymous. What would your message be to the fellowship at this time, as someone, who has seen the flourishing of the fellowship over nearly, over 40 years? Mm-hmm. What would you say? What would be, your words to the fellowship, Jennifer?
Well, the most important thing that we accomplished was changing the preamble, not just to say recovering from cocaine, but all other mind altering substances, because I think it was the first woman in CA that came back to a meeting and said she had had a glass of wine the next day. And Ray said, no, you can't have wine. And so they had to change it to, or we had to, cocaine and all other mind-altering substances. So you never had to use cocaine to be a member of this fellowship. And I find that amazing. So don't wait till you go down further the trail. Get on board, stay, don't leave. Instead of keep coming back, say stay.
Absolutely. And, we're coming to the last minute or two now of this recording, but I sure hope you can come back and talk to us more in the near future. And, it's been very moving for me, as I've already said, and, to see God's hand moving, the sovereign creator moving. And there's no need to apologize for God. The creator has wrote all these things, NACAA, the planet, life itself, the designer of mankind. We are not a religious program, but most of us believe there is a creator. It's just a reality. but it's not necessary to recovery, but for many of us, we accept that, it's a sovereign person who has wrought all these things, and it is very moving, to look at the bigger picture. And
sorry.
No, it's all right. No, come back in. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to share one thing that just came to me when you were sharing. I used to go to a place that was Bowery bummed. You know what that is? People that live on the street and everything. I would go to Graymore, which is where they dried them out, and they'd hose them down for bugs before they could go in. And a priest did a study of all the men that had been sober and lost it. And he found the common denominator was they hadn't asked God to keep them sober each morning. So that is what I would say to everyone. Don't forget.
Yeah. And I have another friend with several decades clean, and he says that's what he's done every morning. God, I'm an alcoholic. Grant me power, grant me wisdom, grant me grace to help others today, and to stay sober. And he attributes his long-term sobriety to that one reality. And that's what it is. It's connection with that power. It's the principle of working the 12 steps. And I believe the footsteps with and towards God. That's what I believe. And I believe that conscious contact begins in step 1, when we get honest about the consequences, the powerlessness and the unmanageability, internal and external. And that when we get into this process with someone who knows what they're talking about, we learn and we flourish and we grow, and recovery becomes an enjoyable, pleasant experience. And we cross that bridge to normal living, don't we?
Yes. Yes. And I just want to say one more thing, because I am so excited because we've just been in this for an hour, and what enthusiasm. I find a lot of us in Cocaine Anonymous have a lot of enthusiasm, and I researched it. And whatever the root word is in Greek, means of God. So our enthusiasm is from God. And when I feel that, I know my ego wasn't involved. And so I am very grateful to you and to the enthusiasm that's a gift from God. Thank you.
And what's amazing about that is someone sent me the definition of that the other day on WhatsApp, and it's N is the Greek word for power, and theos is the Greek word for God. So it means to be filled with God's power, enthusiasm. It literally means to be filled with God's power and spirit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you send me that?
I'll try and look for it. Yes.
No, I'll look for it. Never mind.
No, I'll try and find it later. Yeah. But I mean, so in summation, it's just been wonderful having you here this evening, sharing with our listeners. Thank you so much for coming along. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Just that I am so grateful that I was able to come in. I mean, it's a real honor to me that I was able to come in, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I just feel God flowing through me through this. So thank you.
That's just truly wonderful to hear. And thank you so much. And to our listeners, stay safe. Check out the other podcasts. Come along to meetings. Read the spiritual literature. Read the Big Book and the 12 and 12, and stay connected. So God bless you all. And thank you so much once again, Jennifer. It's been a real blessing.
Thank you.
Okay. Shalom, shalom. Till next time.
Thank you.